Now, the Paris chief of police warned today that the French capital is going to face major disruption in the run-up to the start of the Olympics. Well, the opening ceremony is going to be held along the River Seine on the 26th of July. It's going to involve 160 boats carrying athletes from all around the world on a 6-kilometre-long route towards the Eiffel Tower. But this opening ceremony is proving to be a security headache, and it's taking place against the backdrop of wars in Ukraine and Gaza. France 24's Selina Sykes filed this report for us.
An unprecedented security operation for an unprecedented opening ceremony.
With 92 days to go, our goal for the opening ceremony is still the same: to put on an unprecedented show that will be watched by 220,000 people on the upper banks and 100,000 people on the lower banks of the Seine. A ceremony running over a 6-kilometer course that's never been seen before.
Paris 2024 organisers wanted to make a splash when promising to open the Olympics with a spectacle along the River Seine, in what would be the first opening ceremony to take place outside of a stadium in the history of the Games. But their big ambitions are causing jitters in a city that knows firsthand the threat of terrorism. French authorities unveiled on Thursday more detailed security plans for the 26th of July. Around 20,000 people who live and work along the Seine will be the most affected.
Everyone who wants to enter will be systematically investigated and will need authorization from the police.
A security zone around the Seine will be in place from the 18th of July, 8 days before the opening ceremony. During that period, security measures will effectively cut Paris into two, warned the head of Paris police. Security checks of properties overlooking the Seine, the closure of metros and roads to traffic, as well as stop and searches of individuals and vehicles, are just some of the other precautions, all with the aim of pulling off an Olympic ceremony like no other.
Well, for more analysis, we can speak now to Mathieu Zagrodzki, who is a researcher at the University of Versailles and an expert on security issues. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it really looks like this opening ceremony is the main cause for concern at this stage from a security point of view. Why is that, do you think?
Good evening. Well, obviously, it's an unprecedented event, and the size of it is unprecedented. And also, the amount of people expected along the river is unprecedented. Well, first, it was announced that there would be 500,000 people along the river, along that 6-kilometer strip for the ceremony. Now it's been reduced to a little over 300,000, but that's a massive amount of people. And the complicated issue with this is that Paris is a very dense city. Traffic is difficult there. So whenever you need to bring, if you need to bring a security squad or a rescue squad along the river, it's very hard to do it through the roads. So you'll have to use the river in case anything happens. And basically on that day there will be 45,000 police officers mobilized for the event, which is probably the largest concentration of police, of law enforcement agents in one spot in the history of France.
I mean, we've had some officials sort of floating this idea of a plan B for the opening ceremony, something perhaps a little bit more contained, a little bit less ambitious. I mean, do you think there is a real danger that that opening ceremony could be cancelled?
Yes, actually, President Macron mentioned a plan B and even a plan C in an interview a few days ago. And of course, if the security risk is high, if there's information intelligence basically indicating that there's an imminent threat, there is a risk that they move the ceremony to a safer location and to a location that is easier to control. Well, right now it's impossible to say how high is that risk. What is the possibility of this happening? But nevertheless, the French authorities have definitely that in mind.
I mean, they can't anticipate every single risk there is, but how well prepared would you say the French police and the other security services are in this country for the Olympics?
Well, there's a lot to say about that. Well, first of all, France is used to organizing big events. There was the Rugby World Cup last year. There was the Euro in football in 2016, and I could list many other events. So it's nothing new here. Nevertheless, risks are high. The event is unprecedented. There might be shortages of private security because it's important to mention that approximately 17,000 private security agents will be mobilized for the event, and there are apparently recruitment problems. So it's very hard to answer 3 months ahead. Authorities are reassuring people, saying everything will be ready, but there are slight alarms here and there about that event.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of additional measures, I mean, some countries, notably Greece, today offered some assistance with policing the event. Do you think that's the sort of thing we might see more of for kind of global events happening in Europe, a kind of pooling of resources, a pooling of police services? Because I can imagine that being very helpful on the one hand, but on the other hand, I can also imagine it causing a lot of confusion, language barriers, and therefore creating perhaps more work than if they hadn't come in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good question. Greece announced that. Poland announced a few weeks ago that it would provide, military forces, military agents for the event. So, yes, helping each other seems to be a rational answer and a rational solution. We're not talking about dozens of thousands of people. Obviously, that's a few hundred here and there. And like you said, there's the language barrier. Basically, from what we know, those additional foreign officers will be used for other activities that don't involve being in contact with the public, like, for instance, sniffing dogs for prevention of explosives, things like that. So that's probably something useful. And once again, let's not forget that this is happening during the summer. There will be 45,000 police officers mobilized for the ceremony, 30,000 for the other days, while other things will be going on, especially people going on vacation across the country, being on the roads, and burglary still happening and drug trafficking still happening. So it's not like everything will be on pause security-wise for those 2 weeks of Olympics. So I think any extra hand is needed now by the French government.
And just lastly, for someone who's watching, who's thinking, shall I stick around in Paris for these games or shall I get out of town and go on a holiday? How disruptive are we talking here for these games to the daily lives of people who live here in Paris?
Well, it kind of depends on the neighborhood where you live. Many Parisians are saying, I'm going away, because what people who are listening to us abroad need to realize is that the security perimeter is along the Seine River throughout the Olympics, not only for the ceremony, and really the river cuts the city in two. So we'll be having this sort of barrier in the middle of the city, separating the left and the right side of the river. So that's very disruptive. A lot of security measures. Also, a lot of people coming from abroad. So transportation will be back. We're actually having announcements or demands by the local authorities to not use public transportation but walk during the Olympics, to not overload the transportation system. So yeah, it's sort of a nightmare that is coming for the local population.
Okay, Mathieu Zagrodzki, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us about that.
My pleasure.
Thank you.